Hello and welcome to my next video. On this one, I'm going to be going over the political shift we've seen kind of in America to the right and how the right side of the political spectrum has, in my opinion, moved even further right. Um, I touched on this briefly in my intro video, but basically, I feel like this has been going on for around the last 12 years or so, kind of around President Barack Obama's second term, I would say is where it started to become noticeable. Um, and in that video, I kind of touched briefly on how I think media bias and some propaganda has played into it a bit. There's a lot more to it than that, but anyways, a lot of this is going to be my opinion and how I've seen it as a person more in the middle, with no allegiance to either political party. And the rest of it is kind of how I've seen others react to it, mostly online, just general sentiment, people on forums, people on social media, interviews with people, podcasts, etc., on reasons that either they shifted or they feel like their party has screwed up. If they're on the left, something that they've done that they don't agree with, it's moved people to the right. So basically, I'm going to kind of just go through what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I feel. So now, when Trump first came about, the media really didn't take him seriously. Even right-wing media, they kind of stuck with their establishment politicians at the time. But as he got going, what the media found out, both left wing media and right wing media, is he was a cash cow. Trump, whether it's pro Trump or anti Trump, it sold. It made media companies a lot of money, got them a lot of views, which got them more advertising dollars. And so they just kept running with it. So, with the media cashing in on all these Trump views and anti Trump views, pro Trump views, if you think about it, he was getting covered leading up into the first election that he won for probably a solid year. Political media companies made a buttload of money, whether they were for or against him for his entire first presidency. Then maybe, you weren't as friendly toward him, whether you should or shouldn't be. For the next go around and he loses, well, you get another 4 years where you can talk about Trump and how upset he is that he lost. And then look at that, Trump wins again. Now you get another 4 years where you can talk about Trump, whether you're for him or against him. And maybe you'll even have a couple more years after the fact to talk about him even more, depending on how good or bad this presidency goes. A little conspiratorial. Do I necessarily believe that or believe that the media did everything they could to try and keep him in the spotlight? I don't know, something to think about. Don't know if I truly believe that, but it would make sense. Be a good way for them to cash in on it. Now, to get into the more seriousness and less conspiratorial. So, in my opinion, one thing that Trump and the right wing media has done is they have just been better at telling a story or repeating like the same messaging over and over again to kind of drill it into their viewers or the voter base or whoever's heads, right? So, even if the story's not necessarily true or if it's exaggerated, as long as you repeat it and you stick to the same messaging, it's going to stick in people's brains. Like, think about Fox News, for example. They always brought up these immigrant caravans over and over. Every time around election time, there just so happened to be this giant immigrant caravan that was coming and going to cross the border. And then after the election happens, it's pretty silent on the immigrant caravans up until another election's coming up. There's that immigrant caravan again. Same with Trump. Like when he first talks about how many illegals are in America, I'm pretty sure he started with, oh, there's, a couple million. And then he grows the number. It's like 5 million. No, there's like 10 million. I think he settled on like 20 million illegal immigrants in America or something. That's how many he says he's going to send out when he gets into a presidency here in just a few days. He's going to start the mass deportation of the 20 plus million illegal immigrants. Now, is that number accurate? Is it true? I'm not entirely sure. Um, Lots of data shows that the number is much smaller than that, or that that's how many illegals total have crossed the border over like the last 15 years or something. But no matter what, he's repeated it enough that that type of messaging has definitely stuck with people, no matter how accurate it is, or if it's exaggerated. It's big numbers. Now, speaking on big numbers like that, if you look at Democrats, how they campaigned on for this election, right? They campaigned on stuff like, oh, unemployment's really low. It's like under 4% unemployment rate, which is really good, but small number. GDP over 3% GDP growth. Again, that's good. somebody who like me who really likes numbers and likes data like that, awesome. But most people, they hear 3% GDP, they hear under 4% unemployment, they hear they talked about inflation being back under 3%, which again is good. It was very high globally. The United States, like I've talked in another video before, did do a better job at bringing it down faster and better than most places across the world. But again, small number. And even though it's good, people just aren't that attached to it. They're more attached to another story that Trump's told about the old lady that goes to the grocery store and buys 3 apples, or she's going to buy 3 apples. She brings them up to the cash register. They ring up the apples. She goes, "Oh, are they really that expensive?" And I said, "Well, yeah. Okay, well," she decides to put 1 apple back, right? He's told that story like 6 times. Now, whether he actually ever heard that story or not, who knows? But no matter what, he told it a lot, he's talked about it a lot, and he's also telling the ordinary person that he recognizes grocery prices are high. Grocery, I just love the word grocery. They're too expensive. We're going to bring those prices down. Bacon, eggs, apples. Like he talks about that. He talked about it all the time. That's a story that people can relate to, even if it's not true, because every ordinary person has had to deal with more expensive groceries. Yeah, sure, inflation's down now, but prices went up and they stayed up. That's probably one of the reasons that he got a lot of votes. Now, do I think he's going to be able to bring prices down like he claimed while campaigning? Probably not. In fact, if he imposes the tariffs that he's talked about, uh, we're likely to see prices go up. But we'll have to wait and see on that. Maybe I'll make a video on the future regarding tariffs if it goes into place or anything like that. But anyways, so aside from these stories that they repeat over and over again, which gets attachment to it, makes people remember it, it's easier to campaign on. At the same time, anytime that something goes wrong, don't take any responsibility for it. Like, and that's both parties. No matter what, if there's a negative story and it was your fault, find somebody else to blame. Trump has been very good his entire life at finding somebody else to blame for anything negative. Now, one thing here that came out when regarding stories, I'm going to play my first clip. So, when you heard about the attacks on New Year's Eve, right? The New Orleans attack and the Vegas attack, right? So it came out, this guy's name, he'll say it himself in the clip here, but when they first reported on it, it was basically, oh, this has to be a Islamic terrorist attack, basically, in New Orleans. Um, but I'm going to play the clip now, and here we have.
I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career as a real estate agent, where I feel like what really sets me apart.
So, there you have it. Not an Islamic terrorist, not an illegal uh, American citizen who was in the military, lives in Texas, from Texas, real estate agent. But anyways, when it comes to telling stories, in my opinion, if the Democrat Party, they need to get better at telling stories. They need to get better at relating to the average person if they want to regain some of that voter base that they've lost or that they aren't inspiring to go to the polls at least. For the next part, I'm calling it the abandoned base. Whether it's truly abandoned or not, that's up for debate, but I'm going to start with an analogy of a family, right? So, mother and a father have a first child. That first child is loved, well treated, taken care of greatly. They're the firstborn. That family then gets pregnant, woman gets pregnant again. She has twins this time. So now there's new babies. Not only that, they are different. They're special, right? It's twins. So extended family gives them more attention than the first child. People out in public give them more attention than the first child. They probably get more attention in school than the first child because they're different. Now, the parents understand that this is, just a natural thing that might happen. So they make sure to treat all their kids fairly. They make sure that everybody's treated equally, that the first child has just as much, say and can do just as much as the twins. But that doesn't change the fact that the first child is going to feel like they lost some priority, like they lost um, just that attention that they were getting, even if they are being treated the same as the twins who are different. I think that kind of relates to how the whole population of people in general across the United States has kind of happened, right? So, starting with probably the late 90s and 2000s, there was definitely a bigger focus toward incorporating and making like minority groups feel support and feel adequate representation. Um, the type that the original group, had the majority of the representation, be it adding more minorities or LGBTQ people into TV and movies, stuff like that. They're not necessarily being treated better, they're just trying to be treated as equals. But the original group, you can see how they'd feel like, well, we used to have this, but now we don't anymore. So they feel like they've lost something, even if the reality is they are mostly being treated the same. Now, there are things that is wrong, right? Like, in my opinion, things like affirmative action, um, certain DEI type stuff, um, and then there's like forced inclusion and forced diversity, which is definitely different than regular diversity. Like regular diversity is great, right? Like you're watching a TV show and takes place in New York or something like that. Say there's like 10 main characters, right? Like there's almost certainly, if it's regular diversity, there's almost certainly going to be a couple of minorities in there, might very well be a gay person in there. That's just standard diversity. It represents reality. Now, forced diversity, which we definitely have seen some of, is, oh, half of them are minorities or half of them are LGBTQ, right? Like that's more so on the forced side of it and not just natural diversity. And there are times where that may have gone too far. Uh, just jumping in with a quick subtopic. I'm not sure exactly where I'll place it in the video, but I wanted to add another thing in my preliminary work for this video that moved people to the right was COVID and the pandemic, actually. I personally know people who definitely shifted further to the right due to COVID, and it was for a variety of reasons. One, the left and the Democrats wanted to be a little more strict with it, whether it was just because they were more cautious or trying to be responsible, didn't really matter. The fact that they were more strict with it and wanted to enforce harder lockdowns, wanted to enforce a bigger push for the vaccine and a bigger push for requiring vaccine documentation definitely pushed some people to think that they took it too far and were trying to take away freedoms. Um, it's about all I have to say on it. In hindsight, you can say what choices were right and what choices were wrong, but it definitely contributed in the political shift to the right. Next up, I mean that's basically it actually for that category. Pretty quick, pretty simple, in my opinion. Next up is PC culture. Now I'm going to play another clip for this again. Let's see here. Video capture.
Of themselves. They're only words. It's the context that counts. It's the user. It's the intention behind the words that makes them good or bad. The words are completely neutral. The words are innocent. I get tired of people talking about bad words and bad language. Bullshit. It's the context that makes them good or bad. The context that makes them good or bad.
So that's George Carlin. RIP, by the way, one of my favorite comedians in the past, and he nailed it when it came to stuff like language and words and the PC culture and how much it is bullshit. And it definitely pissed a lot of people off, even people on the left. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, the leftists made PC culture a thing," which I mean, yeah, definitely. I would say a decent focus of it was because of left-wing policy or worrying about cancel culture, comedians not being able to say things. And it is my opinion that, yeah, the PC culture got super out of hand. South Park did, they added a PC principal as like a main character, making fun of it and remained themselves. And that's, the creators of South Park are liberal people, but they're like, yeah, this is just stupid. Comedians, even if they're liberal, call it out. You can't restrict, like, you shouldn't say terrible things about people, right? But when you make everybody walk on eggshells with what they're going to say might offend somebody, it's tough, especially when the groups of people who are mostly getting offended weren't the groups of people that the words are representing. Um, like just use an example here. Apologies if I offend a short person, but midget, right? Like there went through an era where you weren't supposed to say midget, for a short person. You had to say a different word. And the people who were complaining about the word or wanting you not to say it weren't the midgets, weren't the little people, right? Same with like oh shoot, like sports teams that had changed their names, right? I think it was the Washington Redskins that changed to the Washington Commanders. I believe there was like an Indian group or whatever that like talked about how they wanted them to keep the name. But you see all these sports teams across America changing their teams because they don't want to offend people. So now, on top of this PC culture, this is why the right always says that the left is anti-free speech. Because yes, there are some things you shouldn't say, but maybe you took it a step too far, trying to cancel comedians for saying certain things, trying to change um, stuff that isn't that offensive to seem like you just can't get allowed with saying it, right? That they believe that it's anti-free speech, which is why they try and blame that on the left. Now, in reality, if you look at anti-free speech, which political party is doing the book bans? Which political party, when I was growing up, wanted to get rid of the Harry Potter books? Which political party instituted a don't say gay law in Florida? Which political party tried to cancel the Dixie Chicks for opposing the war in the Middle East? The war that literally like everybody, including Trump, opposed and said our soldiers needed to get out of there. We shouldn't have been there. That was the right. It was the right that did those things. But due to like PC culture and people being afraid of what they can and can't say because they might offend somebody, they managed to blame all of the anti-free speech stuff on the left, and it's stuck. Despite the fact that the right has done a ton of stuff that's anti-free speech. Look at Colin Kaepernick too, right? Kneeling to the flag. Well, that's unpatriotic. He can't do that. Well, was he not expressing his free speech? But anyways, so then along comes Donald Trump after all this PC culture stuff and what you can and can't say comes, and he's saying whatever he wants. He doesn't care about offending anybody, despite the fact some of his stuff that he said should be frowned upon, and he definitely shouldn't have said it, especially the way that he like talked about women, the way he made fun of a disabled reporter, and he definitely went a little bit too far in like a schoolyard bully type. But as an adult, it's just kind of childish, I guess. I can't say it any better than that. But there were a lot of people that liked him just because he wasn't afraid to offend people. So now I'm going to switch. Let's pull up another clip here. Quite a few clips in this video.
It's in. It was back to Trump for another doozy.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks.
So, again, wrong thing. Again, some of that stuff he definitely shouldn't have said. And it should be frowned upon, especially if we're talking political leaders that you want your kids to look up to and stuff. But there were just so many people that were like, finally somebody who's not afraid of accidentally saying the wrong thing and getting canceled or being looked badly upon. So people liked him for it. Whether you should or shouldn't, it definitely gained him a lot of support. I know a ton of people that are just like, oh, he just says what's on his mind, or he's not afraid. And so they go for it. I got one more that I can kind of play as well with it. Probably didn't even need to close that.
Well, we have some of the dumbest leaders in the world. We have losers. We have losers.
They're losers. They're just losers.
We have very stupid people. We have stupid leadership. How stupid are our leaders? How stupid are these politicians to allow this to happen? How stupid are they?
So there, which kind of leads into my next topic of him not being afraid to call out other politicians. This brings me into the next portion on these topics, which is anti-establishment, right? So he's making fun of and calling out all of these career politicians, saying they're dumb. And then there's a lot of other comments he made back then about how corrupt they were, how much money they were getting, and that they were catering to all the money. He was going to drain the swamp. He said that lots of times, that these people were getting paid to push a certain thing, and that they were basically not for the people, and that he was. So a lot of people saw him as anti-establishment. Now, at the same time, when he was first running, he was running against the establishment candidate from the Democratic Party, which was Hillary Clinton, who got the nomination over an anti-establishment candidate, Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie Sanders gained a ton of support from ordinary people. I think he had like record small dollar donations when he was running and trying to get the Democratic nomination. Um, a ton of ordinary people were backing him, whether they were on the left or not. Um, and he made it a big deal also while campaigning against big pharmacy, against big corporations. He had a long history of favoring people over corporations, or favoring people over corruption, basically. But Hillary Clinton ended up getting the nomination, and a lot of Bernie voters felt scorned by that. And liberal media was pretty against Bernie. They pushed Hillary Clinton as well. And was it fair that Hillary Clinton got the nomination? Well, she had actually had the votes to get it, but how much of that was just due to the fact that she was the establishment candidate? So now, instead, I know a lot of people even that didn't care about left or right. They just wanted anti-establishment. So they switched from being a Bernie Sanders voter to a Donald Trump voter. It had nothing to do with party. They were just against the system. They felt like the system was broken and that it needed to be torn down and restarted, or at least changed with different types of people. And that's what a lot of people thought they were going to get with Donald Trump. And maybe when he was first running, that was one of his original goals, is to be more of an anti-establishment candidate. But if you look at here, second term, that's not really how it's working out. I'm going to play another clip.
Bezos came, Bill Gates came, Mark Zuckerberg came. Many of them came numerous times. The bankers have all come. Everybody's coming. Bezos came.
So these are the richest three people in America: Elon Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg. He's also mentioned how Bill Gates. This is the guy who was supposed to be anti-establishment and draining the swamp, getting rid of corruption in politics, getting rid of big businesses controlling Congress, and deciding what gets passed and what doesn't. So now for 2024, Trump is the establishment. He's with the establishment. The establishment came with him. He campaigned this time around telling oil companies, you donate me, I will make sure I pass legislation that favors you. He talked about the bankers coming and visiting him in Mar-a-Lago. Mark Zuckerberg, who was not a Trumper, has turned and bent the knee, and he's going to be there at his inauguration. All these rich, wealthy corporate business owners that have more money than they know what to do with are donating to his inauguration. They donated to his campaign. This is the establishment. But anyways, that's basically how I'm going to end it. I kind of gave all the reasons why people originally started moving right, how they could get pushed further right. But in the end result, which honestly, there's a lot of MAGA on social media, a lot of people who consider themselves MAGA that are pretty upset with the whole Zuckerberg thing. They're like, oh, you can't take him. Did you not see how he was treating you? That's for the next video. Did you not see how, what he said about you? Like, they were happy when Trump said that he was going to put Mark Zuckerberg in jail. And now they're confused because, wait a minute, you guys are on the same side? And a lot of them didn't like Elon Musk, and because he's the electric car guy, right? He gained his notoriety off of liberal policies, and liberal companies. And now he's basically Trump's right-hand man. Some of MAGA is even like, wait a minute, I didn't vote for Elon. I didn't vote for Elon Musk. Why does it seem like he's the president with how much Elon's been involved already and the presidency hasn't even started? But I guess we'll see how it plays out. I just think you're mistaken if you were in that crowd that believed that he was anti-establishment, and that's why you wanted to get behind him. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks, and see you next time.